Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks. Happy New Year to everybody. We have a great start to the new year. I am happy to welcome to our show Jake Hall. He is industry guru, works for a company called Zelstra right here in my hometown of Grand Rapids, Michigan. But much more importantly, he is the Manufacturing Millennial. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. Great to be here and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd ask you about your holidays, but obviously they haven't happened yet.
They haven't happened quite yet.
We're in the future.
I'm sure they're great, though.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, thanks so much for being on. Jake and I, being in the same place, finally got to meet each other just a few months ago and had a beer together. So we have talked before, and I'm really looking forward to chatting again.
Yeah, it's going to be a good conversation.
Yep, good deal. And so I already warned you, we got to kick off with, tell us about the ball cap.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chicago Cubs, I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've actually never lived in the state of Illinois, but both my parents are from the Chicago area. My wife is from Central Illinois. And I mean, where we live, Jim, it's a matter of fact, Wrigley Field is about the exact same distance as it is going over to Tiger Stadium. So in West Michigan, you actually have a decent amount of Cubs fans because back in the day when it was just radio, you had WGN.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it sticks. And honestly, the Cubs, the field's just beautiful. The organization's just fun to cheer for. It's, exciting every year, win or lose. You're a diehard Cubs fan.
Well, and so now, of course, it's become part of your public persona too, right?
Absolutely. People recognize me and say, hey, you're the guy with the blue hat or the Cubs hat. And, I just kind of stuck with it because it gets something that people can, either give you a hard time on because you're like, hey, when their Cubs going to win? I have no idea. Or it's just something that, people remember you by, which I think is important within a personal brand.
Yeah, well, finding you at a conference alone, it's got to be a gold mine.
Oh, yeah, especially with face masks on. I was the most spottable person this entire past year at trade shows and conferences.
I believe it. All right, so let's dig into the meat of stuff here. What is it that brought you to manufacturing?
Yeah, my history has always been my passion for love of building, designing, and engineering things. I think my wall of Lego behind me contests to that. Now I have a little bit more expendable income where I can buy the sets that I always wanted as a kid. But if you were to ask my parents, they would say, oh yeah, Jake Hall, once he touched Lego, he never let go of them. So the idea of being able to follow instructions, build a model, or be creative, imaginative, and build your own thing has something that I've always enjoyed. Now, transferring through high school, I was a part of programs like Science Olympiad, First Robotics. When I was in high school, I had the opportunity to work for a custom machine builder after hours, just being on the floor, doing the grunt work of cleaning CNC machines, sweeping shop floors, wiping machines down, blowing out inside of equipment. So I had that hands-on rough experience before I even went to college. And when I was in college, I went there and I got a manufacturing and product design engineering degree and a minor in biomedical engineering. So my whole career has been around this idea of manufacturing and robotics, but there really were no other options unless I wanted to get in that field unless you went to college and you got a degree.
Yeah, very cool. And I love that. Harkening back to the robotics program, I had an article about robotics and FIRST, and I think you and I chatted about that. And what a great...
I think that's actually how I reached out to you.
That's right.
Now that you mentioned that, I said, hey, I saw your article. I was actually in that program in Granville.
Yeah. And so talk about a testimonial for that working and getting people into our world, right?
Absolutely. It's
cool.
A huge driver to get people involved.
Well, and so now officially you work for this company called Zelstra, right?
That's
Tell
correct.
us about that.
Yeah, so Zelstra is headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have about 550, 600 employees, and we are a provider of electrical services, system solutions and infrastructure, and then the group I'm a part of, which is our industrial tech group. So we help manufacturers and companies modernize their facilities and help drive them towards a digital transformation to really bridge this old industry of manufacturing to the world of digital that we live in. And manufacturing is no longer a physical product and process. It's digital as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I've touched on this a number of times, how we really do a bad job marketing ourselves, because in so many people's eyes, especially parents, they still think back to the old days of manufacturing dirty and dangerous and not a place for a career. And it's so totally different anymore.
Yeah. And the numbers match that too. When you look at the numbers, 4 out of 5, when they were interviewed, 4 out of 5 adults said manufacturing was critical to the US economy, but only 2 out of 10 would actually push their kids to go into the industry. So even though they recognize that the industry is critical, they say, well, that's not the path for my kid. And it goes back to the whole idea of dark, dirty, dangerous as the 3 Ds. I had a 4th D to that, which is used as well, which is dull, where there's no brilliance in manufacturing, and that stigma is no longer true. And I don't think it ever was true. It's just the persona that we viewed where, manufacturing is just this really dirty automotive with grinding and dust and all that. Well,
just the assembly line. You're turning out a bolt.
It's not just that. I mean, you look at the fact is the biggest thing across the news right now has been the supply shortage, but it's also been the chip industry.
Right.
And so the reason why we're having such a shortage of a lot of products right now, like my wife and I ordered a new fridge and dishwasher and stuff over the weekend.
Oh boy,
we're not going to get it till February next year. And the reason for that is because the components and the microchips that are going into these stuff are not available.
Yeah, I got to jump in. It's February of this year now.
Yeah, sorry, February of this year. Yeah, thank you. Not 2023. So by the time this is airing, I'm hoping I'm going to get my appliances within a month or so.
You're closer. It's almost here.
Exactly, right? When I'm going back and listening to this thing, I'm 1 month closer. But I mean, that's the industry that we face, where the manufacturing industry had this stigma for so long is not being innovative, not having the newest technology. And I would disagree. When you look at the Industry 4.0 solutions, Industry 4.0 and the idea has been around for decades. But now we have the technology, the cost efficiency to develop it, and the knowledge to rapidly transform manufacturing processes in a digital way. We can make manufacturing a lot more exciting and a lot more innovative and a lot more engineering and design focused with collecting data and acting on that data.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I had an article, one of my earliest ones for Forbes was about automation and robots specifically. And look at the history. That stuff goes back to the late 1950s, early 1960s. So this is nothing new. But you're right. I mean, the advances we've made and the cool stuff that's out there now, it's always been innovative. It's just gotten so much more so. Right.
Absolutely. And when you look at the industry, the 1950s and 60s, automotive is where that technology lived for so long. That's where the innovation was happening. That's where the robots were being integrated. And that's the case up till maybe less than a decade ago. Robots lived in automotive because it was, large components, high volume, lower SKUs, large justification for ROI because it was grunt work. It was about endurance and repeatability. But that's changed now. I would say the automotive industry is no longer the leader of automation and robotics. We're seeing more, AI-based technology outside the automotive industry and pharmaceuticals, medical, agriculture, logistics, warehouses. We're seeing more innovation and more integration of robotics and new automation solutions outside the automotive industry. And that's why it's so important to break the stigma that manufacturing is this dull, boring environment. It's like, you're not working necessarily in automotive or in a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. You could be working with robotics and AI-based vision picking and guidance through a completely different sector.
Yeah,
but it's still
absolutely.
manufacturing.
Yeah, example is I spent about half my career with General Mills, and long before I was wrapped up with them, we were installing AGVs in our warehouses. We were actually exploring automated unloading of trucks, and I left almost 10 years ago.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's in the food world, it's everywhere you look in manufacturing now.
Absolutely. There's so much automation and robotics happening outside the automotive industry.
Yeah. So specifically, what role do you play there?
So at Fine Zelstra, my current role is a business development manager for them. So
Okay.
I help basically work with Fine Zelstra to determine target accounts that are going to be an area that we can help companies with their digital transformation and automation roadmap. So we work with companies that can say, hey, over the next 3 years, how do you want to digitally transform your manufacturing process or your logistics or your warehouse that can, adapt for change, adapt for the labor shortage that's continuing to happen in the industry, be able to handle the supply chains. Companies that survived, well, not necessarily survived, but thrived during the pandemic of 2020 and this year were companies who already had a lot of automation-based manufacturing processes and were not nearly as crippled when a lot of companies had to work from home. And you and I were here in Michigan, March of 2 years ago, because we're in 2022 now, March of 2020. I mean, everyone listening to this knew, it was a work from home. Unless you were an essential worker, you couldn't do that. And granted, the food and the pharmaceutical and a lot of those industries were considered essential, so people still worked. But the issue is if you had someone who got COVID, who was a part of that line working with 12 other people, they had to have those 12 people sent home. So you couldn't produce product on that line. Well, if that line was being run by a team leader and you had 6 robots working on that line, you reduce your risk a lot. So the idea, I want to mention something real quick. The idea is that I want to integrate as much automation and robotics to replace my workers as possible. No, what you need to do is you need to integrate solutions where robotics can assist workers working alongside them. So you don't have to have that intense labor, where you can have a guy work remotely from home to monitor that automation system, not necessarily have to be there to physically manage it.
Well, and going back to that earlier point of the D's, the former D's of manufacturing, that's what automation has helped get rid of, is the dull and the dreary and the dangerous. Those are the jobs that deservedly so have been automated, and we're taking people out of harm's way. We're making jobs more interesting. So you're out there making it happen.
Yep. Yes. Cool. I mean, that's what we do. And we have a fantastic team. I mentioned our headquarters is here in Grand Rapids, but then we have other locations in the state of Michigan. We're in Tennessee. We're in the Carolinas. We have locations in Ohio. So we're really spread throughout the eastern part of the U.S. and we fly over the U.S. to help companies, small to medium-sized manufacturers, and then also the large enterprise facilities to help them with their modernization strategies.
Very cool. So there's that whole side of what you do, which is itself phenomenally cool, right?
Yeah. So that's my day job. And a lot of people don't realize that I have that day job. They just think, I do social media full time. And that's not the case at all.
That's what we'll hit on next. So you are the manufacturing millennial. That's like a superhero, right?
It's something. It's a brand, and the story goes like this. So when I was in automation distribution coming out of college for my degree, I went in there and I sold PLCs, safety equipment, collaborative robots, a lot of the stuff that sits behind me, to help systems integrators and end users take components and create an automated solution out of them. That's the value that I sold them. But when I went to these different conferences and trade shows that I was a part of, I recognized really quickly that everyone was Gen Z or older. There was no millennials involved in this. And I'm like, so here you at these trade shows that have the latest innovations. Here you have the conferences that have the thought leaders of the industry moving forward. Yet none of these companies and their leaders had younger people at these to be inspired and to be the next people, the next generation of workforce for manufacturing automation.
Yeah.
So I said, that's ridiculous. Why is it? And my occurrence really never realized of how much of a gap the millennials had in the manufacturing industry until I really looked at those knowledges. Growing up in West Michigan, the universities are extremely involved with Grand Valley State's engineering program, where we roll right out of college at Grand Valley into a job. It's like a 99.5%. You have a job offer before you even graduate school, like a year in advance. And the remaining percent oftentimes go to a graduate program. And that's the only reason why they don't have a job offer. But it's a bubble in a sense, or not necessarily a bubble, but we're an outlier of what the rest of the industry is, where we have a phenomenal amount of amazing engineering and automation companies here in Michigan. That's not the case across manufacturing across the board. And I realized that, and I said, well, I'm a millennial and I'm super passionate about manufacturing. I'm very outspoken about it. And I get very excited about it. I'm going to name myself the Manufacturing Millennial. It's got a fun ring to it. I was always already wearing the Cubs hat, and I just kind of said, hey, I'm the Manufacturing Millennial. But it really didn't happen or kick off until COVID of 2020. And I wasn't even involved on LinkedIn. I was on LinkedIn. I had a profile on there. I didn't do anything with it. So it wasn't until March, April of 2020 when I said, you know what, I'm going to start posting content on social media, because that's what millennials do. We're on social media, and I'm going to start talking about the problems we're facing in the industry, not necessarily the products that I sell. And what I found really quickly is my content grew at a very rapid rate in profiles and followers and subscribers, because I wasn't trying to shove products down people's throat. I was trying to address, these are the problems we're facing in the industry. What do we need to do to address them? And if there's products that addressed those problems, awesome. If there were people who had thought leadership ideas, I talked about them, I shared them. And that's kind of how my brand grew as the Manufacturing Millennial, which is my personal profile on LinkedIn. From 300 connections, Jim, to I think I'm at 27,000 followers. Probably by the time someone's reading this, I'll probably be over 30. Just because it's at a rapid pace. I mean, last week I grew 2,200 followers in a single week. So my content's 10 million views annually. And that's really interesting when you look at the numbers in the manufacturing space. Now, 10 million views is hardly anything compared to other industries. Consumer products, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. There's views out there where people will get 10 million likes on a picture post. But manufacturing, we have never as an industry taken the idea that we need to be active on social media and engagement to attract the future workforce, but also to make our industry more accessible and exciting. We are never in the manufacturing industry going to address the 2.6 million jobs that are going to be unfulfilled by 2028, because you have the silver tsunami, I think you should call it, as all the older generations are retiring, they're leaving, and you don't have the upcoming workforce ready to move into manufacturing. So how do we address that? We have to excite the brightest and the most innovative people to be a part of an industry to help automate it. And we have to take the everyday workers who are on these manufacturing lines, have them come to the industry, and then put programs and processes in place that are going to help them grow, that are going to make them move from a machine work, a line worker to a line, operator, to a team leader, to a shift leader, whoever. We need to attract people to the industry who don't go to college, who don't get a skilled degree, but equip them in a way that's going to move them up, where we can continue to retain and invest in their knowledge and grow their knowledge to move in this industry. Because the one thing about manufacturing is you're never going to have a high school guidance counselor say, oh, your kid should go into manufacturing and work at, the company down the street, 8 to 5, 9 hours a day, and do that. They're never going to say that. They're going to go out and say, oh, your kid should go get a 4-year blah, blah, blah degree and graduate with $36,000 in student debt and not have a job when they graduate. That's the reality that we face right now. There's so many people going to college or universities that drive no value once they graduate. I know people where I graduated from college in 2013, so we're in 2022 now, who still have student debt
Right.
9 years later.
Yep. Oh yeah.
We both went to the same college. We both had some of the same classes, but there's two differences. I'm in an industry that's growing, that's moving forward, that's going to be completely job stable 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road.
Yeah. And that pays very well.
Manufacturing is never going away.
Right.
It will never. People need products. Manufacturing makes those products.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so how do we need to, basically going back to what I was saying earlier, we need to create a program that's going to excite the future workforce to come and be a part of manufacturing and show them that manufacturing drives purpose within their lives. And I think that's the biggest thing with millennials and Gen Zs. And maybe did I say Gen Zs earlier when I meant to say Gen Xs? I can't remember.
Probably. Okay.
I apologize. Baby boomers. What is it? It's
boomers,
boomers, baby boomers, Gen Xs, millennials, Gen Zs.
Yeah.
Right. So I apologize if I said Gen Zs earlier and I threw everyone.
People will figure it out.
Yeah, you'll listen if you're this far in the conversation and you're still like to listen to Jim and I, 10 minutes in. But we need to figure out how do we communicate purpose to millennials and Gen Zs? Right. And why is manufacturing so important? We need to communicate to them. And we communicate to them by saying we are investing in our industry through automation, through technology. And by doing that, we're investing in you.
Yep. Well, and you touched on something that's been a favorite subject of mine. And that's that whole, trend we had for literally decades of shoving everyone in the direction of college degrees, some of which made great sense. And,
absolutely.
None of them are a waste. Any education is great. But to your point, if you're going tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and then you're getting out and making $25,000 a year, you're probably not going to be in very good shape.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And that's an element that has to play into that discussion. Are you seeing from where you sit, people starting to wrap their minds around, geez, this has to change?
Yeah, absolutely. And the numbers are showing that too. You're seeing a decline in four-year degrees. If you're to look at the numbers right now, you're seeing a decline of enrollment in four-year educational programs. You're seeing a lot more go to local community colleges. Now, what we need to do is as a manufacturing industry, you need to invest in your local college. Yes. I think this could be transferring to our next point here. I don't know if this was a point or not we were going to have, Jim, but we're having it anyway, is your labor. For those of you who are listening to this podcast, your labor is local. So you need to invest locally in your labor before they even come into your facility as a job interview. So many times we're super passionate about how do we get people involved? How do we make our career hiring opportunity important? If you're worried about that now, you are far behind already. Yep. You need to be addressing, at a high school level or a middle school level, your involvement in those programs. Why do you think so many companies love to sponsor first robotics leagues? Mm-hmm. Because they say, here's these kids who are passionate about robotics, who are passionate about design, who are passionate about building. If we invest in them, they might eventually come and work for us. And even if they don't come to work for us, what we're doing is we're creating a better future for our future employees, rather that be that person that doesn't necessarily come and work for us, but they come and work for a customer of ours. We need to, as an industry, realize that legislation is not going to make manufacturing better here in the United States. And I don't want to get into politics, but let's face it, regulation of manufacturing in the United States will never be as beneficial to the company as it is over shipping it overseas to China or whatever, because they don't have the same regulation for us. And that's just the world we live in. Is it right? No. Is it good? No. Reality sets in. That's the world we live in. So regulation's not going to improve manufacturing in the U.S. What is going to improve manufacturing in the U.S. is companies investing locally in their high schools and their community colleges and their universities to create programs that are developing the necessary skills so when they graduate, they are hireable, ready, and knowledgeable on the industry they're moving into.
Yeah. You know who does a phenomenal job at that? You ever heard of Aaron's?
Yes.
To make snowblowers. And,
yep.
Little Brillion, Wisconsin, down south of Green Bay. Yep. They have invested over years now. You know, it's not something they did just overnight, but they now have STEM education in their local Brillion school system from K to 12.
Yeah.
And it's all, you know, clearly they have their own interest in mind, but at the same time, not everyone who goes through those programs is going to work at Aaron's, right? Yeah. And so it's that kind of mutually beneficial trade-off you make of, yeah, we've got to own the problem, and Aaron's has, and, you know, yep. Had a great chat with Dan Aarons for one of my articles, and it's all about, you know, if the schools aren't going to build it for themselves, then we need to own the problem, help them put in those programs that eventually will deliver the workers we need, plus it's raising the bar for everybody.
Yes.
Just a beautiful, beautiful situation over there.
And I think it goes back to that contest of, you know, when I originally reached out to you, said, hey, I love that article you did on Granville Robodogs, you know, 288 and 240. They have like 3 high school teams now. But when I was involved with that program, they had like 30 students. Now they have like 600. I mean, they by far, Granville, and I love tooting my own horn on this because I graduated from the school. I was a part of the school. I was a part of the program that the Granville Academic Team Boosters, like I was there when it was founded around a dinner table having that conversation. But the fact is, we can say, listen, there are more kids involved in robotics in high schools than any individual sport at the school. Yeah. There are more kids in robotics and automation programs at that school, K through 12, than there are football. Yeah. Like, and it's not like it's not a technology school. It's a public school.
Yes. And remember the headline of that article?
No, I don't.
Robotics, the sport where every competitor can turn pro.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Boom. Just a phenomenal line.
And they all get varsity letters too. So don't think it's like something that's not available. They didn't have it when I graduated there. I should reach back and say, I want my varsity letter. But,
you should.
You know, but it's the importance of the success driven from there. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at the graduation rate coming out of there, I think every year there's almost $500,000 in scholarships that come out of that program every single year for kids to go there, because they don't just necessarily introduce them to technology and robotics and automation. They prepare them for the future.
Yep.
And be ready. So why are you as a company in the middle of, let's use this, Eastern Kentucky, you know, not being involved? And I think the reason why I bring up Eastern Kentucky is because I want to bring up ECAMI, which is the East Kentucky Manufacturing Institute. I'll send Jim the information, so when you listen to this article, you can find it. But it's a program put together in Kentucky, literally in the middle of nowhere, because the only reason why I haven't been there yet is I have to fly and then drive 4.5 hours to get there. But the reason where it's located is because it used to be where all the coal mines were. All the coal mines are shut down. So you have all these people who no longer have jobs. So the local community and a bunch of organizations like Haas Machine, which is one of the largest CNC companies in the world, donated like millions of dollars. And they built their own machine instructor robotics lab at this university where they're taking 30-year-old veteran coal miners and teaching them how to program robots and CNC machines. Yeah. So awesome. it's not even just, if you're listening to this conversation, it's all new people. It's all new people. No, it's not just new people.
That's right.
I know a ton of people who are going to local community college here in Grand Rapids, going to their mechatronics program, or in Lansing, going to their robotics program, who are 30 to 40 years old, or who are already in the industry and their company's investing in them, saying, hey, go here at nighttime, we'll pay for it, or we'll pay for half of it, and you're going to go get a mechatronics robotics degree.
Yep. So and we've got proof right here that what you're saying is true. And that is, I'm Gen X, and we are on a YouTube show and podcast. You can teach an old dog new tricks.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, though, and the number one source of information now, if we want to learn something new, is video and social content.
Yep.
If I want to fix my car, I don't open up the AutoZone manual where you go to, alternator, page 67, flip it open.
Right.
All right, here's the instructions, on a half faded printed piece of paper. I go to YouTube and I search blah, 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 replace alternator, and I have a walkthrough video.
Yep.
So the way we learn and consume new knowledge now is completely different, and it's available and it's free.
Yes.
That's the whole entire thing as well. Like Tim Wilborn,
Right.
who's super involved with LinkedIn as well. Shout out to you, Tim. If you ever listen to this podcast, he has a free, he's got a YouTube channel with 25,000 subscribers.
Awesome.
And
Yep.
he literally posts almost on a daily basis something new on how to teach people how to program PLCs. He even
Yep.
has a free PLC Alan Bradley course, which is the most known PLC, system here in the United States, of how to teach yourself from day one how to program a PLC.
Right.
That knowledge is available, and we need more people to do that.
Yep.
And then second of all, the whole reason why I'm on social media and I'm a huge activist for this is we need to communicate that those resources are available.
Yep. Another great example is my first guest on this show was Titan Gilroy. He's got the whole Academy of CNC. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, the stuff's out there, and you're right. We just need to keep growing it, keep highlighting it. And you actually segued very nicely into what was going to be my point, going back to the Manufacturing Millennial, is what a phenomenal job you do of just getting those videos from companies, and they're just short little snippets, but it's like, oh, you watch it like, oh, okay, so that's how they do that.
Yeah,
it's
my
cool.
version. It's my version of how it's made, but it's technology and automation. And like I would love, like, okay, anyone here from Disney, or Discovery Channel listening to this, reach out to me. Let's do a how it's made automation in America. I would totally, collaborate with Mike Rowe on it.
Right, Mike, if you're watching, come see us.
Yeah, right, Mike Rowe. If you're listening to this podcast, or if anyone knows Mike Rowe or has a connection, let's connect. Right,
definitely.
Yeah. But it is, how can we excite the future passion? And it's by taking the technology that we have available now, the resources, the social media, and bringing it to that audience to educate them. That's what it's important. And in order for us to do that, we have to make that content available. You'll be surprised, Jim, and you probably know this, how many manufacturing automation companies do all this new technology with robots and vision systems and automated equipment. They have zero online presence.
Yeah.
Like I went to a trade show 2 or 3 months ago in Chicago, the assembly show. And I went out there, and like 24% of the companies that were there didn't even have a LinkedIn page, which is considered the standard for business, right? LinkedIn is this, if you're a professional, whatever, you're probably on LinkedIn at a profile of some sort to get people to come to you, to know that you exist.
Yep.
So nothing had it, but then the numbers were even larger than that, like 64% or like 70% or something like that, didn't even post a video on YouTube the last 90 days. So here you have all these companies who go to trade shows, pay tens of 20s of 30s of thousands of dollars, talk about technology, yet they're not even online using technology. We need to educate this industry. They need to step up their game and be more accessible.
Right. Well, and going back to our original point, it's all such cool stuff, and it makes such great videos, as everything you post shows. Like, wow, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that leads into a little something I saw just the other day, that you have been selected to be part of this LinkedIn's Creator Accelerator program, which sounds totally cool.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. So, really what it is, I'm still learning about it. By the time you listen to this, I'll be into it by now, and I'll be creating content with LinkedIn, because we're in January or February now, and it kicks off at the beginning of 2022.
Yeah. And so definitely watch Jake's page, connect with him or follow him, and you'll get the updates. But go ahead.
But yeah, so what it is it's LinkedIn recognizing as a platform they need to engage in content creators in their professional world. There's other platforms out there, TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, where people just post content. The content is, for some people it's engaging. I don't necessarily enjoy half the stuff that's posted on there. But what we need to do is we need to create thought leadership around professional industries. And that's why LinkedIn partnered with 100 other content creators to say, we need you to create engaging thought leadership based content around your industry. And I'm doing mine around manufacturing and automation. So it's really exciting to see how social platforms want to collaborate with thought leaders to drive engaging content.
Well, and so it also speaks really highly of exactly what we've talked about here. They wouldn't have included manufacturing if it wasn't a great fit for this program, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I'm the only person out of the other 100 candidates that's in manufacturing automation.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I mean, I was wondering if I didn't go for it, would we have had anyone to begin with? And that just screams the problem. There should be 20 people, and that's the whole goal. When I walk out of this program and I'm talking with LinkedIn, how do I get 10 more people involved from the manufacturing automation space? Because I could care less if it's me, but what I do care about is increasing the voice of this industry by any means necessary. If it's through me or if it's through other people, it's a win in my book.
Excellent. Right there with you. Let me know if I can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then what's next? What's coming down the road for you professionally, for you as the manufacturing millennial, for anything under the sun?
Yeah, I mean, so 2022 is my goal to be platform agnostic in terms of I want to be on more social media platforms. Now that 2021 was my goal for 2021 was to set to build a brand, to become a recognizable brand in the manufacturing automation industry. Now I'll say I could put a check mark next to that box now.
Definitely.
Now that I have the conversation going and why we need to create content that's engaging and authentic, that's not about selling products, it's about addressing the problems we're facing and highlighting cool solutions, I can now take that content and bring it to other platforms to engage in the same way I do on LinkedIn, where I highlight unique manufacturing processes. I'm going to take that same content and I'm going to bring it to other platforms as well to continue to drive awareness. So that's a goal number one. Goal number two is to have more thought leadership conversations. My goal for 2022 is to get out more, have these conversations in person, go and speak at universities and schools to help them inspire, saying, listen, you are the future, but you need to be more, your future needs to be more than just an 8-to-5 job. You need to inspire your existing friends and family to look at these industries, but also to get ready to invest in that future generation, because manufacturing, I mean, when you look at the numbers, we're getting smaller. We need to turn that around, and we need to turn US based manufacturing up again to what it was 30 to 40 years ago.
Agreed. There's goal number 3 too. It's an easy one. Have another beer with Jim Vinosky.
There you go. Have another beer. I'll put goal number 4 in there as Chicago Cubs are going to win the 2022.
Oh, wow. That one I can't promise will be easy.
Yeah, I can't promise that one, but fingers crossed, even though we literally lost the entire team last year.
So what you and I ought to collaborate on, though, is at least doing something local to pull in some folks, and maybe next time we have a beer, it's just throwing it out there. Hey, come have a beer with us and let's talk about how do we get the word out there? How do we make what's already cool very visibly cool?
Yeah.
And
how do we have a manufacturing
people who are coming up?
Or, how do we go to some more of these events?
Yeah.
West Michigan has, right now in January, there's going to be the kickoff of all the first robotics competitions. January is when the season kicks off. So there'll be a lot of other exciting engagements as well. But, here, especially if you're listening to this in West Michigan, let's connect, let's get involved. Let's figure out how we can highlight what you're doing and impacting, the industry in a positive way.
Very well said. So where do they find you? Throw your info
a couple
out
ways. So on LinkedIn, if you just search for Jake Hall, I'll probably be one of the first people that pop up, and then, look for the blue Cubs hat. That's the easy way to find me.
Yeah.
If you want to reach out to me directly, you can just do that at info@themanufacturingmillennial.com. And if you're listening to this or watching it, we'll try and post that somewhere, because I know it's a long email. I'm working on it. But if you reach out to me as well, and we'll chat that way.
Awesome. Jake, it was even more fabulous than I anticipated. And I'll say my expectations were high. So I appreciate you taking the time.
I was able to meet him.
You were. Absolutely. You were definitely able to meet him. Great talking to you. Thanks for taking the time, and best of luck with your goals here in this new year that we're in.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah, so you have been listening to Manufacturing Talks. Watch for us every first Tuesday and third. I'm sorry, no, first and third Tuesday of every month when we have new episodes coming. So Jake kicks off our year, and I promise we're going to have some really cool guests coming up. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Jake.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vanoski. Watch for new episodes dropping on the first and third Tuesdays of every month.